Welcome to another episode of 10xMarketer podcast. If you're coming here for the first time, make sure you follow us on your favorite platform. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube channel. Today we have Rishi Rawat, who is a copywriting expert, and we would be discussing a topic which is fundamental for any D2C brand. That is how to use the power of your copywriting and content. Rishi has a great experience into A/B testing, copywriting, and other D2C areas, and we look forward to have a great session with him.
Yeah, Giri, great to be here with you and have this opportunity to talk to you and talk to your audience. My name is Rishi, as you mentioned, and I am a copywriter. And over the last 14 years, I've been essentially working with direct to consumer brands using the power of copy to massively improve their conversion rates.
Awesome, Rishi. So I'll straight away fire the first question, and that's an important topic for my audience. Uh, how do you convert the top of funnel buyers using the power of copy?
Yeah, so this is a question that I think about a lot. It's very relevant to the brands that I work with. They spend a lot of money on TV advertising, they spend a lot of money on Google, they spend a lot of money on Facebook. And the first problem that we encounter is that people that click on their ads and come to their landing pages, they leave the website very quickly. And so the question is, and the principal challenge is, how do I communicate to them when they're only going to spend 15 seconds on the website? And my response is that don't try and convert them in 15 seconds. It is a losing game. And in fact, if you think about it, if you listen to any expert who has figured out a way to make Facebook ads convert, they always emphasize on the offer. So their whole approach is that have a great offer and then your Facebook ads will work. But yes, they are correct. So one of the things is that an offer you can communicate in 10 seconds. But the problem for the brand is that if they're always going to be offer based, then how do they, they're always relying on some kind of a discount or some kind of a promo to get someone to buy. And I think there are better ways of doing it. And I think the first thing to do is to recognize that whether you are selling an eczema cream, or you are selling a shampoo, or you are selling a water gardening system, whatever it is that you're selling, it's very difficult to convince the buyer in 15 seconds. So the first thing that you have to do as a marketer, the ad has already done its job of creating a product market fit, because they would not have clicked on the ad if what you were saying was not relevant to them. On the landing page, the first job of the copywriter is to actually slow the user down. So if the user typically leaves in 15 seconds, my first job is to actually get them to spend 20 seconds. My second job is to get them to spend 25 seconds. My third job is to get them to spend 30 seconds. And there'll be some point when they've spent enough time where they have slowed down, and they have now, the idea of what my product does is now sinking into their head. The copywriter cannot start their job until the value of the product has actually gone to the user's head. So my response is that the first thing we have to do is we have to slow the user down. And anyway, so I just wanted to mention that. And if you have a follow up question to that, I can share an example about how you can slow them down and all of that good stuff. Giri,
Of
your
course,
audio
that
broke.
would be yeah. Of course, that would be my next question. So, slowing down a user, and specifically the people who are coming from the world of instant gratification. So, we are
Correct.
talking about Facebook and Instagram. They are watching the reel, and even on the reels that they are watching, they don't spend more than 15 seconds
That's
on a
right.
reel,
That's
right?
right.
So, and they suddenly you are expecting them to slow down and spend more time on your listening to your story.
That's
First
right.
reaction that I have as a user is, why should I do that,
Right.
and how
Great.
can you really slow me down?
That's a great question. And it's, I think there's a lot of experimentation that has to be done. It's not like there is a template response where I say use these 20 words and magically everyone will slow down. It is a huge function of how we are pulling in the audience, number one. It's a function of what your price point is. It's a function of what's the nature of your brand. So there's a lot of nuance here. But to answer the principal question, exactly like you said, Giri, why would I spend more time with this brand? So there are a couple of techniques you can use, and I use a lot of buyer psychology tricks. So one of the techniques is you have to hold up a mirror for the user. Now there are very clever ways of doing it, but the basic principle is this: imagine if you are selling an acne cream that helps reduce your acne, right? The user is willing to spend only 10 seconds with you, let's say. Okay, so the first question I would ask the user is, how long have you been struggling with acne? Because what you're doing, because they have definitely struggled with it for a long time, right? So by automatically doing that, you're automatically reminding them that if you've been struggling with this for 1 year, don't you think you can give me 5 minutes of your time so I can tell you how my solution works? That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing that is to use social proof. So I can give you 50 variations of this. I'll give you another one. Another one is, you can start off the copy by saying that 80% of people that read our reviews and understood exactly what the product did had a satisfaction rating of 97%. So now you're telling them, you're showing them the value of a certain type of behavior, right? Another technique I use is this. I will say something like, we have been researching this acne problem for 300 hours. We are experts in this, and as much as we can try, we cannot explain this to you, the value of this, in 10 seconds. But if you can give us a minute of your time, we think you'll find it very valuable. So that's another way of doing it. So you have to calibrate this. But now here's the point. Here's the big point. The key thing here is that copywriting cannot be done without analytics. This is one of the problems that happens, is that a lot of copywriters are not technologists, and a lot of technologists are not copywriters. But actually, you have to leverage technology to actually know if your strategies are working. You can't just write a piece of copy and run an A B test, because the A B test will not give you the right data. The A B test is telling you whether the transaction happened, or the A B test is telling you if people move from the landing page to the next page. That's not what I'm measuring. So what you would do is, you would apply either Google Tag Manager, or you'll apply some kind of scripting tool to see how much dwell time, which is how much time the opening of your copy was in the viewport of the reader, whether it's desktop or mobile. And now I don't want to get too technical. My point, and I know you understand this, but my point is that, imagine if the person typically scrolls down in your opening in 3 seconds, and now we've got them to scroll down in 5 seconds. That is a signal to me that they're actually reading what you are saying. So it tells me that this approach is working. Now, if you don't see a reduction here, then you have to try a different opening, because you're trying to find, essentially, like, it's like, not to use a literal example, but I think this is a very important point. It's like parenting, Giri. The way you train your children to do good things is different than how my dad trained me to do good things. They wanted the same outcome, which is, please study, don't overeat, don't make noise. But some parents apply sternness to get the results, some parents apply examples to get the results. Some parents compare the child to their cousins and say, look, this cousin was very well behaving, so the child learns. So my point is, you have to keep on adjusting your strategy till you get the desired outcome. But the basic point I'm trying to make over here is that, traditionally what happens is that the copywriter says, my job is to drive sales, so I will make adjustments so I can drive sales. And the point I'm trying to make is that, if you are looking at, it's kind of like, in a car, if you're looking at the dash of the car and you're looking at the speedometer, and you're trying to measure why the car isn't going faster, you need to actually look at the engine gauge, because you might be out of fuel. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that, yes, going faster is the goal, but you need to look at some of your other metrics, like, for example, how much time did the person actually spend time with me. And in fact, to get to one final point, not only do we track for the dwell time, we actually have tracking for the conversion rate. We actually build this in conversion rate of people that lingered for, let's say, 30 seconds. So now we actually have data that says that people that stayed for 30 seconds or more converted at 7.2%. So now the CEO understands, oh, it makes sense to get people to spend more time. And so that's those are some of the ways in which you can do it.
Okay, so now two questions which are important as next follow up questions. One is, let's say your visitor is coming. The first thing that they see is the headline, and mostly the product page are designs, or the designing practices are like that, that there's a certain way of putting the information out, right? They see the headline, they see the product image, they see other description and everything, right? That's the way it's funnel. And before doing that, they also see the ad. So if the ad has the same message, then they are able to maybe connect more, because on the
Yeah, yeah,
landing
yeah.
page also they become familiar. They see a familiar outcome. The second aspect is, how do you adjust that in your UI and UX, so that the important point or the main part of the story is highlighted properly on the page. So writing copy is one part, but putting it across for the user is another crucial part, because if they don't
That's right.
see it, they don't
That's right.
connect to it.
That's right. That's a great point. Yeah. So I think we have a very specific way of approaching this. I don't, you know, I'm the way that we do it is, and I'll just very briefly mention how we do it, and then the listener can decide if this is an approach that they want to use or not. So what we do is, because exactly to your point, the product page, the way it's designed, typically the big typical format of a product page is, on the left there's an image gallery, then on the right there's a short description, and then below that, if there's a sizing chart or color options, then below that there's add to cart, and then below all of that, above the fold, is the longer description. So there's very little room to play with and in that location. Also, the thing is that I don't really know, actually there is no rule that says exactly how people will use the product page. Some people will read the description first, then look at the image gallery. Some people will immediately focus on the price first, and then they'll kind of read the reviews, they'll bypass everything. So it's very difficult to know actually how the user is behaving as well. So what we've discovered is that the best thing to do is to place call to actions at all of these locations. So in the image gallery, for example, in the third image, never in the first image, but in the third image, on at some opening, in the image itself, I'll place a button that will say something like, see why our eczema solution is the best, for example. And then in the description, in the product description, I will add a sentence that will simply say that, see why we're number one. And to the right of the price point, I'll add a call to action, that's because I know price point is also very high anxiety driving element, right? Because ultimately people are scared about paying money. So I'll add a call to action that'll say, quality above everything else, or quality matters, some kind of call to action. And what I'm doing is, all of these call to actions are conditional. So what that means, Giri, is that if I click on the call to action, the button that's in the third image in the image gallery, all of the other links and the CTAs that I've created will become invisible. So I don't want to repeat the same content, right? If you've seen it in the image gallery, then I'm good. If you've seen it in the description, I'm good as well. Now I'll tell you what we do. When you click on it, we show a light box. So this light box appears on top of the product page. It covers most of the product page, not all of the product page. So the user knows, on desktop, so the user knows that there is new content that's been surfaced. So they know that they can click the close button and get out of it. I don't want to restrict the user. But then what we do, Giri, is something I think very fundamental. One of the problems with marketing is that we have too many distractions, right? So like you said, someone is on their Instagram reels, they're on Facebook, they're already 90% of their energy is already spent looking at Facebook and looking at videos, and they're already tired, right? So what I want to do is, on the product page, I don't want more things that are screaming for their attention. On the product page, the price point is screaming for their attention. The discount promo is screaming for their attention. Image gallery says, please click me, see my images. Description says, please read me. Reviews are saying, please see what people are saying about the product. and the user is like got all of this noise. And I don't think conversions happen when there is noise, right? Just the same way that I can't study for an exam if there's loud music, right? I need quiet. So this light box that we show, actually what it does is it's a very simple light box. It has a white background and black font color text in the front, and it allows us to, in a very kind of calm way, communicate this idea to the user about, spend give us more time so we can tell you what we are doing. So that's the approach that we take. Now, if the listener doesn't want to apply that approach, and I'm happy to talk, if they were to message me, I'm happy to talk more about this approach, because we've applied this approach for at least 300 experiments. So we've practiced this process 100 times, thousands, hundreds of times. But the point is that if they don't want to do that, then they need to identify a part of their product page that has been specifically designed to get the most amount of attention. So that they have to figure out, is it the image gallery, is it the description, where is this? If it's the description or the image gallery, then you use that real estate to communicate this whole idea of like, what we're about to tell you is, this whole idea of slowing the user down. So that's what I would say. We have only two options. One is to work within the design that you already have on the product page. The other is to essentially kind of break the design completely and really focus on this message. Because the way I look at it, Giri, is that it does not make sense for my user to read reviews on the product page unless they really understand why I created the product, why the product matters, right? Imagine if I'm buying a new phone and you're deciding between Samsung and some other 10 other brands, and you don't even look at the specs of the phone. You just start reading the reviews, and the reviews say this phone is amazing, I love this phone. This is not enough information for you. You want to actually understand in the value of the phone in the context of the problem you're solving. Maybe what you care about is battery life. So in that case, you really don't care about people saying that, that the screen is really clear. It's irrelevant to you. So to me, the point is that I don't want the reader to read my reviews until they, at least at a very basic level, understand why my product is the best in the world for the very specific problem that they are solving. And the only person who can do that, or the only person who I trust to do that, is the brand itself, not the customer reviews.
Okay, that's a great point. I think one problem with the UI UX for D2C brand is originating from the fact that everyone or every best practice that ever been in the D2C space is coming directly from Amazon. So people copy the Amazon product pages. Most themes that you see in a D2C like Shopify are directly coming from Amazon D2C page. Now the problem with this approach is that you don't really know whether that's a perfect way of putting it. And Amazon page, it's so cluttered these days that if you keep copying from there, you will end up creating a even cluttered page for yourself. Amazon, being Amazon, they have millions of visitors, so
That's
they
right.
anyway get conversion even if they are throwing whatever comes. But if you replicate and if you expect the same performance for yourself, then it's slightly troublesome. Now the question that I have is, let's say you designed a perfect light page which is loading on top of what you're doing already,
Correct.
and then you have the image and everything is in place, you have the product description already, and still people are leaving very early. Like you have done everything according to the doctor's description, still you're not getting the kind of conversions that you are expecting from that
Correct.
product. Now how do you figure out whether you have written what you have written is right for your user? Is it the problem with the audience, or is it problem with the masses?
Yeah. So good, great question. So the first metric that I'm paying attention to is how much engagement am I getting on the landing page. And I want this number to, so again, the simple way to start is you first look at your campaigns, your ad traffic, and you say, what is the average engagement of the audience that is coming to the website? If the answer is like 5 seconds, then we how do we increase it from 5 to 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds, but at some point the engagement, you would have solved the engagement problem, right? And also the engagement thing is not something you're constantly increasing indefinitely. If you're selling a product, you don't want people to be spending 3 minutes on the page. It doesn't make sense. They won't do that, right? So there is an upper limit to engagement. But I think what your question is that, okay, now that we've solved the engagement problem, how do we know if our copy is working or not? So here what we have done is we have identified, there are, again, remember, I am singularly focused on converting first time buyers. I want to be very clear about this definition, because if the listener is trying to convert a different type of audience, then this approach does not make sense. This approach is specifically for people that you are bringing into your website through your advertising who have never bought your product before. Now, what we've done is we've analyzed to see what are some of the common points of friction, what are some of the common stumbling blocks for all consumers, irrespective of what the product category is. Because I was trying to find a formula that I can apply. I have clients that sell expensive items, clients that sell cheap items, clients that sell complex items, not complex items, and I don't want to have to research for each brand individually to figure out why their customers might not buy. There is value in that. Research is useful, but there are lots of common things as well that we can identify, and we can really focus in on those things. So we've identified 9 of those such variables. I won't get into those variables, it's beyond the scope of this discussion. But one of the variables, for example, is is too good to be true. So what that basically means is that whenever the consumer encounters something, for example, there's a eczema cream and they say that you apply our cream in 3 days, your all your eczemas will go, all your problems will be gone, please buy a product. This is a classic too good to be true scenario. And this actually backfires. What happens is it actually hurts conversion rates because nobody believes that that's possible. So my point is that you need to identify all of those things. So there are those 9 variables. So what we do is, and on my blog I've talked about those 9 variables. If someone just searches my blog, they'll find it. It's one of the most important articles on the website. The point now is that these 9 variables act as ingredients in a dish. So what you need to figure out is in what proportion do I need to use them for my sales pitch for your product. It depends on the nature of the product. It depends on your price point. It depends on your competition. For example, if you are selling a product that nobody's competing against. Let's say someone has invented a new way of making coffee that is completely different. Nobody uses that method at all. It doesn't make sense to talk about us versus them, because there is no them, right? It's you're basically telling them why your process is superior. That's the anxiety that the person, that's the part that they're not sure about. On the other hand, if you're making running shoes, right? These are shoes that you wear to go out for a run. There are 5,000 companies that are making running shoes. So now us versus them is very important. So my point is that the recipe and the ingredients and how much of that recipe you're using is a direct function of your price point and all of those things. So, Giri, the reality is that the only way to know if your pitch is correct is to assemble a recipe and assemble multiple variations of this recipe. You're not trying to like apply simple permutations and combinations and saying that, okay, in this example, this was the opening, in this example, we'll use this. Is stupid. Don't do that. What you want to do is on a plain piece of paper, basically make an argument for why someone should buy your product and think about the reasons why they would not buy it. So the two things that I always think about, Giri, one is I think about expertise. We are living in a world of expertise. If you met an expert today who said that, Giri, I can help with SEO, I can do PPC, I can do product packaging, I can take care of shipping, you will immediately hang up. You'll be like, boss, there is no way that you, like, I am very scared of you. Nobody wants to work with a generalist, not especially because these things are so complicated, right? So expertise is one thing that I always want to emphasize, and the other one is skepticism. The consumer, you have to understand, I did a calculation some time back. Do you know that the average customer consumer sees at least 347 ads every single day? And every ad is making the same claim, which is please ignore all the other ads. Trust me, I'm the best product. This is what you need. And a lot of times brands make this mistake of saying that we are selling a back massage machine. So we are competing against back massage machines. This is not true. You are competing against people that sell vacuum cleaners. You are competing against laptops. You are competing against Netflix. You're competing against any product that is going to is going to cost money, because the consumer only has a fixed budget every day. Once that money is gone, they're not going to, no matter how good your product is, they're not going to buy it. So we are actually competing against all consumer products. So if you have, sometimes clients will say, yes, Rishi, it's correct that there are 347 ads, but how many of those ads are advertising a back massage machine? And my point is, it's not relevant. The fact that they're advertising and they're making the same claim that you're making, which is that forget about all other ads, I have something unique, please look at me. The consumer can't possibly believe 347 companies. So what happens is we've developed shortcuts. In fact, these shortcuts move so fast that we actually, consumers, if you were to interview a customer and say, I noticed that you didn't click on this ad, or I noticed that you clicked on this ad, went to the landing page, but didn't buy. Can you tell me why you didn't buy? The consumer won't even realize that they clicked on it. They won't even realize that why they didn't buy. But there is something that made them not buy. And those 9 variables describe the reasons why people do what they do. So, those two things of dealing with skepticism and demonstration of expertise are the most important things that I'm focused on. And so to answer your question, you come up with multiple versions of the sales pitch, and this is where you have to do A/B testing. So you have to basically have one small part of your audience see one version, one part of the audience see another version, and now you're just looking to see which version did the best job in getting more transactions.
Understood. And the point you made about people filling up the form and not even remembering that they filled up the form, it happens very often with B2B lead generation campaigns. You have an instant form on Facebook. When you call the person, he will simply deny that they filled a form. So you end up
It's
feeling stupid right
think Well,
there.
I'll tell you something even more interesting. In on my newsletter, so in my newsletter, the only way to sign up is I don't have any links on my homepage. There's a sign up page. When you sign up, there is a double opt-in, so you then get an email from Mailchimp that says click here to confirm that you want to sign up. And even though we have, those multiple steps, right, I have a lot of people after a year or two that have unsubscribed, that are, when they say why they unsubscribe, they say I never signed up for this. I'm like, are. So my point is, the consumer people just don't remember. The reality is that people are signed up to 100 different emails, right? So I
True.
totally understand their point. But this goes back to the point you're making, which is that people just don't remember. So it's a problem.
True. And the other aspect of this problem is one is, of course, the UI UX. We already talked a lot about it, how to put your content right in front of your audience. Other aspect of this is that the same product page is used for every other purpose. You are retargeting the customer using the same product, same copy. You're also trying to bring the first time visitors on the same page, same copy, and you want to convert them. Then there's middle of funnel audience who have that kind of skepticism where they still not believe whether you will be the right fit for their problem.
Great point. Yeah.
So how do you really fit everything and still stay decluttered? So that's a very complex problem, right?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's a very complex problem. And actually, my recommendation to brands is to avoid falling for this trap. I'll explain to you specifically the trap I'm talking about. Today, it's very easy for a programmer to create a lot of complex conditional logic. So for example, I can go to my developer and I can say that if someone is landing on my page from my Facebook ad, then it's logical that they are, and I can tag the campaign. So I know that this is the ad campaign. So that means they're new visitors. show them a different description. If they're coming through a retargeting ad, then you can identify that they're coming from a retargeting ad, and let's change the description. If they're coming through email, for example, my newsletter list, then change the description again. And I think it sounds very sexy to say that, my god, that's amazing, I can actually make completely different product pages. I think it's a stupid idea. I think it's great for a technologist that is selling the technology. I think conceptually it's a great idea, but I think on a practical basis it's a terrible idea. Because what happens is that now you're making your whole funnel very complicated, and you actually won't even know where it broke. Like, 6 months from now, you will not even remember that I had seven different versions of the page that I created. I had an example of a client where the client said, wait a minute, we are getting all of these coupon applied. They had this code built in. Whenever someone applied a coupon code that didn't work, they would get notification. And they were like, we're getting like a really high number of not applied notifications. They said, where the coupon code is a very specific coupon code. They're like, we don't even have this coupon code anymore, we had it like 2 years ago, like what is going on, or 6 months ago. And then they investigated. They had created a very complicated funnel where, when you sign up, you get these like sequence of emails, and one of those emails had this coupon code, and people were using their coupon code even though that coupon code was no longer relevant, but they couldn't figure out where that email was, so they had to go through their entire funnel to figure out where did we mention this coupon code. So I think these kind of personalizations can lead to a lot of complexity. So Giri, to answer your question, how does a brand how does a brand figure out, how do I not clutter up my page, and how do I like know what to talk about? Very good question. And I have a very simple response for brands, which is, you have to know what is the most important part of your funnel. You just have to know that. So you cannot say that the top of my funnel is equally important as the middle of my funnel. You cannot say that. You have to pick one. Now, my strategy is, and this is one of the reasons why I'm focused on first time buyers, because sometimes clients will say that, we want to have messaging that improves conversion rates of first time buyers, but we also want to improve average order value. We also want to communicate with repeat buyers. And I'm like, boss, you cannot talk to 50 people at the same time. You have to pick a side. Pick the problem that has the biggest upside for you. So you have to really ask yourself, for my brand, if I were to improve average order value by 10% versus if I were to improve conversion rates of first time buyers by 10% versus if I were to improve reactivation rates of lapsed buyers by 10%, which one has the highest economic value? And focus on that. Once you get to a stage where then there's another variable that has the highest economic value, you can shift your focus to one thing. I think companies that focus on singular problems and singular strategies outrun the competition much faster than companies that are focused on multiple problems simultaneously. Even companies like Amazon, they do not say that let's focus on all these problems. They have a very clear understanding about, do we want to increase Amazon Prime subscription? Do we want to reduce our internal cost of shipping by 4%? Like, they create these goals and then they work the entire year on solving that goal. And they everything else, of course, they have a huge organization, they can take care of multiple things, but there's only one principal problem that the CEO and the president are focused on, are aware of. And I think DTC brand CEOs have to also have that same discipline and say, okay, I know that there are lots of opportunities and I know that there are lots of problems, but this one problem for the next 3 quarters is the only one I'm going to obsess about. And you will notice that that metric improves.
Awesome. So I think we had some great questions, and the fundamental answers that you provided were really, really bang on. Before we close, the conversation here, what is one piece of advice you have for D2C brand and specifically people who are writing the copy?
Okay, great. um I would say, if I was giving one advice, I would say read old copywriting books. So if you are a copywriter, don't focus on a course that will teach you how to do Facebook advertising. I don't think there's value there. I think what you need to do is there are lots of very, very old books. Any book for me that is 100 years old is actually very valuable, because if it's still in print, that means that that book must have amazing value, right? So I look at old advertising books, I look at old catalogs, I look at old copywriting books, because the copywriters that were writing 100 years ago had so many more disadvantages. They didn't have video, they didn't have these short snappy videos that we have today, they didn't have color, they didn't have reviews, they had nothing, right? They didn't have dynamic pricing. So all they could do was they could work on a printed piece of paper and type out a sales pitch. So they became experts, world experts at constructing a narrative. So I think that a marketer that can understand and learn from these old masters and apply modern technologies like remarketing and Facebook advertising and all of that stuff, I think you can do really well. And my recommendation is to focus on things that were done 100 years ago.
Awesome, Rishi. So it was a wonderful chat, and thank you so much for joining us today. I would look forward to have future more episodes, and I think the value that you're bringing to the table is immense. So thank you once again. Have a great day
Great to
ahead.
be here.
Take care. Bye.